Welcome to the family with
Alex Brant Bernard Rasmussen.
Andy Brant Bernard.
Co-host Catherine Brandt and special guest Claire.
Hi.
Hello,
Claire.
who is it?
Claire Martin Tellis.
So Claire is not. She's in studio. You're Claire. Claire, you're in studio somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just wanted to- All right. So what's the latest, Claire? What's going on?
Well, I believe we're talking about a survey we did for secure data recovery. How often Americans plan to use technology in 2024?
Well, isn't it getting bigger and bigger and bigger? Should I be afraid of AI? What do you think?
I don't think so. I mean, that's my own personal opinion, maybe. We didn't really talk about AI in the survey, but I don't think so.
No, I understand that, but that's the one thing that just popped into me is like, some people love it and other people just hate it.
It seems to be the new thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything's got to have AI in it. Your phone's got AI. Your browser's got AI.
One thing, Claire, that I realized this morning, and I didn't, because I do a morning show as well, and I discovered this morning that Catherine and I are very unusual in that we like about 95% of the same TV shows, whereas most couples don't like each other's TV shows. Is that how it kind of runs, Claire?
Yeah, I would say over half, 64% of people use technology for entertainment. As far as couples liking the same TV show, maybe over time you just get used to what each other likes.
What do you
I
think,
so.
Catherine?
I think it's fantastic.
So you weren't paying attention.
I was just reading her the information that she has that technology exposes 69% to more negativity in the world than they'd like.
69% seems very low to me.
Oh, yeah. I think that's interesting. And I guess it depends on where people are saying that negativity is coming from. I guess my immediate thought would be social media and all that kind of negativity.
That's the thing is I don't really use social media myself. And I would say that technology has been an overwhelmingly positive thing in my life overall. But it definitely exposes me to more negativity than I'd like, regardless. So it's interesting how 31% of people apparently don't see negativity through technology at all.
Really?
I wonder how they manage that.
Well, I don't know that I would say that. Maybe just they see negativity, but it's not, an overwhelming amount.
Or maybe they like negativity.
Maybe they're the source of negativity.
Yes,
There you go.
Negativity, there's no question. Well, Claire, let me ask you a question. Because I am not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm pretty centrist. I'm about as centrist as they get. I do not like national news, and that would include Fox and CNN, because there were some stories over the weekend, and I watched them both on the two different channels, and they both flat out lied about what was going on. They lied in their own favor. Claire, do you think it's a good idea for the national news to be lying to people to just get them to accept their view of everything?
Well, I mean, of course not. Journalists and news, I don't think that they should ever be lying or that is nearly the case. I would say in our survey, as it relates to news, we looked at the phone uses Americans plan to cut back in 2024. And I believe it was 4 states said that news was the main thing that they wanted to cut back on in 2024. It's Iowa, New Jersey, Utah, and West Virginia.
Is that because of the negativity?
I think that's definitely one reason. We didn't look at specific whys for each of these things, but yeah.
But we do watch a lot of local news, whether we're in town, out of town, whatever, mainly in Minneapolis, St. Paul, or West Palm Beach, places like that. And the local news is not negative. It doesn't. I mean, let me put it this way. I did a morning show for 37 years in Minneapolis. I don't ever remember once going after one of my competitors. He's the worst human being ever born. I mean, I don't understand why they need. I suppose they're running for president, and it carries a lot of weight. It is the presidency, no question. But I really wish they'd stop lying to get people to come over to their side. And they both do it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately true. What are the is there any good news, Claire, about your stats
About
showing any good
technology?
news for us? Yeah.
Good news. Good news. Well, 53% of people say they think their sleep quality would improve with less technology use.
Sure.
So I guess it's just a matter of people choosing to use less technology.
Is that the blue light issue or just having
These are
being
really just
stimulated?
people. Yeah, I think it's both. This is people's just like personal opinions on their own technology use and what they think would benefit them. Embracing a reduction in technology use could also offer more human connection. The survey found 41% of people think technology is more harmful than helpful to human connection. So maybe less technology could create better relationships.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of bad stuff about it, of course, but it's like there's a lot of things about it where, you're showing grandma pictures of the grandkids from a million miles away, that sort of thing that you just
Right.
really can't do without modern technology. And that's what I think a lot of people prefer to use it for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no question about it. Is there a way? I mean, as far as most of us, yeah, we watch shows together and all the rest of it, and have a good time doing that. Is news the only problem as far as people's worries? They staying away from viewing certain things. I mean, is it always the news, or are there other things they just don't want to see?
No, definitely not. Something I found really interesting is that 9 states say that the main thing they're going to cut back on using their phone for this year is music, podcasts, and audiobooks.
Not
Really?
podcasts.
Oh, we're in
No,
trouble,
yeah.
Claire.
No, not podcasts.
Yeah, and we're not actually sure why exactly, but I think it's just interesting because you don't often hear people say, "Yeah, I'm going to listen to less music. That's ruining
yeah,
my
it
life."
is. It's very
That is
strange.
strange. I listen to audio. I was actually thinking about this last night because I listen to audiobooks on my phone a lot. And I'm like, that's why because the iPhone gives you your weekly hours that you spent on your phone. And I'm like, mine's always decently high because I listen to audiobooks all the time.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, my phone's not on and I'm not looking at it. I'm just listening to something on my phone. So it seems like, so maybe it's just people are trying to lower their amount of time on the phone, even though you're not really looking at it. I don't know.
Strange.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't know. Like I said, I don't do much of any of that stuff because I'm always on the move doing. Well, I do 2 separate shows and all the rest of it. I do watch a lot of television, and again, Claire, that has become a problem. But I'll tell you, local news, Claire. No matter where we are, it seems local news they kind of tend to stay away from that kind of thing, which I really like. I like just give me the news. I don't need your opinion on who the president is or the president should be. Just give me the news and I'll decide for myself, right?
Yeah, I'm a little biased as it relates to local news because I worked in local news for so many years. So I think they just want to, help the community and tell the community stories for the main part.
So where did you work, Claire?
I worked in Virginia and
Oh, okay.
in Portland, Oregon as well.
Oh, 2 rather nice places, so you didn't have to go to some hole in the wall. That's good news, right?
Yeah. No, they were pretty big markets for sure. Yeah.
No question. But did you decide to just get out of it and do your own thing?
Yeah. I think there's just sometimes better work-life balance outside of being tuned to the news 24/7 when you're working in it.
So when I sit down to watch the news tonight, is there anything I should be watching out for? They're trying to hook me and reel me in. Are there any of those kinds of things I should watch out for?
No.
Okay,
No.
good. I'm glad to hear that. No, that is good news. I understand you have a very busy schedule today, so I don't want to, run over here. We only got about 1 minute left, but any final message you'd like what should people do? Just go with what they like and not worry about it, or how should they approach it?
I think people should approach it like we approach a lot of things in life with balance. There can be too much of everything, good things and of course bad things. So just
No
balance
question
it
about
all.
Claire, how do people reach out to you if they want to ask you questions themselves?
Well, if they want to find the survey, they can find the survey on securedatarecovery.com/blog. I work at North Star Inbound. We did the survey on behalf of Secure Data Recovery. You can find me at Claire at northstarinbound.com.
Is there a number one thing on the survey that we should all know about?
No, I would say, the top things Americans plan to use their phones less for are social media, gaming, and shopping.
Yeah, I had to repeat that, Aunt Claire. Thank you.
Yep.
That's the main point of the survey.
We appreciate it, Claire. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. Claire was very, very pleasant, didn't you think?
Yes.
One thing I found, there was one statistic that we didn't talk about that I found interesting. 61% of people use technology within 5 minutes or less of waking up. I wonder what the definition of use technology is, because for me, the very first thing I do when I wake up is, of course, I turn off my alarm. So,
I check the weather.
Yeah, I mean, you check your weather, you check your emails, you check your texts, that sort of thing. I'm not like, getting on my phone and starting to, go hard at it. But the first thing I do is I pick up my phone and I look at it.
Most people do it to check the time.
Yeah, I want to know. I want to know what to wear to walk the dog. Do I bring a rain jacket, an umbrella? That's just what I.
Yeah. I mean, no question. Do you think that technology is kind of ruining it for a lot of people because they use it to lie to you directly? Like the national news kind of thing.
Well, you just have to understand that, ever since marketing became a bajillion-dollar way of making money, you're never going to, I think about back in the old days, how naive we were about, if a company put out a baking mix, you never, ever would have thought that they'd be sticking stuff in there that would be harmful to your health.
Right.
You thought... I did, and it was maybe just my own naivete, as it were, is I just always thought that companies had to protect the consumer. I didn't know that nobody's really interested in taking care of the consumer. It's all about making money. And
they'll put the cheapest thing they can legally put in there.
Or just, that Apple spray, that Alar. That was some toxic, horrible thing. Yeah, I think it was Alar. They were spraying apples with Alar, and all this stuff started happening. And I guess I didn't pay much attention to it till I had children, and of course you don't want to poison them. And this cake mix had some sort of, I don't know what it was, asbestos. I don't know what was in there. I have no idea, but that was harmful. It was
diminozide, and they voluntarily stopped using it. In 1989.
So. Yeah.
So it's been a while, but they used it for 26 years. And
I know, but you think about 26 years ago, everybody thinks, the world was just a cleaner, better place. It was like, no, they've been doing all of this stuff forever. As soon as they figured out how to market things to people and they'd buy anything with the right messaging, and nobody was checking on stuff. It pays, in my opinion, to be skeptical.
Anyone who
large corporations
really pays any attention. For the longest time, you had lead in your paint, lead in your gasoline, you had asbestos in your ceiling.
There was
pretty much everything made from between the late 1800s and maybe 40 years ago was incredibly toxic.
Well, a lot of that was just not knowing, but maybe they did know and they stuck it in there anyway.
Lead we've known about the toxicity of for ages. We've known that lead is poisonous for hundreds of years, but they kept putting it in gasoline because no one stopped them. And they put it in paint because no one stopped them.
Because it's all about making money?
Yeah, I don't know what it is about lead, but it makes gasoline burn better or something like that.
Oh, really?
And so in order to remove lead, I think gasoline became more expensive or something like that. And people were like, I'm just going to keep using my leaded gasoline. I don't remember. They stopped doing lead in gasoline well before I was born, didn't they?
Yeah.
I don't know if it was before you were born.
Banned for vehicles beginning in 1975. So
it was 75, okay.
11 years before I was born.
Yeah, there you go.
Right, and once again, we, us taxpayers pay, I don't know how many dollars to like the FDA and this government agency and that government agency, you'd think that they would have our best interest at heart to figure this stuff out and to not let companies just put out whatever they want before figuring out if it's okay.
Well, the interesting thing is that leaded gasoline was common everywhere. It wasn't just like, America's corrupt and, we do what's worse for the consumer. Everyone used lead in everything. Everyone used asbestos in everything.
Lead pencils. There were lead
There
pencils.
you have it.
Pencil
Or
leads are called
graphite.
leads because they used to be lead, but
No.
now they're graphite.
Yeah, they've been graphite and clay. For ages. I have a friend that's very obsessed with lead because her son had lead poisoning and it was a whole thing. She told me, which I don't know. She said that there was never actually lead in pencil lead. There used to be lead in the paint outside of pencils.
Oh, well, okay then.
Yeah.
Why is it called the pencil lead then?
I know, because it's always been graphite and clay.
Maybe it's called a pencil lead. We've just been pronouncing it
We've
wrong.
just been saying it wrong this whole time.
There you go.
I know, because Sage stabbed himself in the hand with a pencil accidentally the other day. It was like super, super sharp, and then he got himself in the palm, like the heel of his palm.
Everyone has a chunk of pencil in them somewhere.
Yep,
from
I've
when
got
they
one
were
in my
kids.
temple from
say, Mom got one in
7th
her
grade.
face.
7th grade, I was leaning on my desk in, I think it was science class, like this, and Desi Fishman walked by and bumped me.
Called out.
Desi. How could you?
It bumped me and it went right into my temple and broke off.
Yep, I got one in my knee.
I don't have
It's been there since I can
pencil
remember.
graphite in me.
Well, as far as you know.
of.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's 50% then, Tom. Any lead in your body? Any
Yeah.
pencil lead?
No,
Pencil, graphite?
you
Whatever.
did that in my schools, they would have probably choked you to death.
I remember
for me, it was
slugging
like-
Desi on the bus on the way home because I was so mad at him.
Well, for me, it was something I did accidentally. Just
Yeah,
you know,
it was-
I
yeah,
wasn't
it's
paying
not like
attention,
you're
and I
getting
stabbed
stabbed.
myself in the knee,
Yeah.
and it broke off, and I was like, oh well.
Yeah.
All right, who's going to call Pat?
I texted her. Okay, she's gonna call in soon.
Okay, one of she calls in, just let me know. Pat has a book out, Pat Miles with Suzanne Watson, Before All Is Said and Done. I kind of posted this morning, or last night, I think I might have posted it as well. We're taking a look at how women changed delivering the news. Because when women came on when I was a little boy, the news was all men. It was an anchor, the reporters were all men, the weather people were all men, the sports people were all men. And then right around, we can ask Pat Miles this, but women became a big voice in the local news and the national news, and we're going to talk to a lot of them. Pat Miles is going to be on today. Diana Pierce is on tomorrow, correct?
Yes.
We got a bunch of different women lined. Cindy Bricado, I'm trying to reach out to Cindy because Cindy, she had a big, she worked for the governor after she left newscasting, and a really, really good voice. Kathy Wurzer, reach out to her. There are a bunch of women I want to talk to because women have changed the way the news is delivered. But, I'm talking about on a local basis. Nationally, it's all about money. It doesn't matter if it's man, woman, child, whatever. It's how much we make the most money. And if we have to lie to our viewers, then we'll lie to our viewers. It's all about making money. Local news is about all I can watch anymore. You guys ever watch the national news?
No,
I don't
not
watch
once in my
any-
life.
I don't watch any news ever.
I don't blame you. Well, the local news is good, though. It is actually pretty good because it points you in the right direction, things to do for the weekend and all that kind of stuff. And, you need to find out what is going on in your community. It's a good idea to keep in front of and on top of that whole situation. But, yeah, I'm of that generation where all of a sudden women came on and we're talking about the news and there was a balance. And not that the guys were doing a bad job with it, but I think like everything, there should be a male voice and a female voice delivering, facts. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Speaking of female voices delivering facts, we have Pat on the phone.
Pat Miles, how are you?
What a segue.
That was quite the segue, Pat.
Kind of been my thing for the past 12 years.
I will tell you something, Pat Miles, and I'm not making this up. I texted, I didn't text. I posted on Facebook that you were going to come on today. People here really, really miss you, sister. I'll tell you that.
Oh, well, that's so nice to hear. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. I
Pat
haven't
Miles-
looked at Facebook today, so I'm going to go on as soon as you're off.
Well, there you go. I like that. Pat Miles with Suzanne Watson. Before all is said and done, I want to talk about news delivery. I want to talk about your book, what you've been through, which has not been very pleasant. Basically, I want to hand it off to you. How you? First of all, I should mention this because people don't really understand it, and I don't know other than the Don Shelbys of the world and the Jeff Passolts of the world. The only news anchors I ever got along with were women. Do you think that's because I was raised by women, Pat, and my mother and my two sisters? Is that why?
Well, that could be part of it. I mean, I certainly think you have an appreciation for women and in the media that a lot of guys didn't. I mean, I remember the first time, in fact, WCCO Radio is doing their 100th anniversary coming up, and they asked me for a story. And I ended up giving them a story about TV, which wasn't what they wanted, but it was the first time I ever anchored with Dave Moore. And I don't know if you remember, but we used to be in that old building on 9th Street, and
Sure.
you had to take an elevator up to the studio. And it was the first time I was ever going to anchor with him. And on the way up the elevator, he basically said, you know, I like you, Pat, but I really don't need a co-anchor. I don't understand what's going on in this business. You know, and here I am, you know, some 27-year-old with no experience, and I'm on my way up the elevator with him thinking, oh, my God, how am I going to get through this? and we got up to the studio, and we went on the air, and I got through the first segment, and I thought I'd pretty much done a good job of holding myself together and that I'd done it. And we went to commercial, and he looked at me, and he said, are you having a heart attack?
Confidence builder right there.
Yeah, right. I was like, well, I guess I didn't do as well as I thought.
Now, Pat, let me ask you a question. After that initial encounter and all the rest of it, and as time went by, did you come to an understanding of who Dave Moore actually was? Because he was a very smart, very nice man, don't you think? Or was he always hard on you?
He was, but, you know, he never did, at least when I was there, I don't think he ever did get over the fact that the business had changed into bringing young co-anchor women on the air with him.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't think he ever got over that. And, you know, I got along great with Dave, and I really admired him, and I learned a lot from him, and I credit him with a lot of the success that I had in Minneapolis. But he wasn't keen on having young women do the news, I don't think. At
Why
least
do you
that
think?
was my.
It's interesting you bring that up because that's exactly the reason that we're going to do what we're doing, talking a lot of women that got into television news and changed it a lot in a good way. I thought we got two perspectives of everything instead of just the male perspective. We had the male and the female, maybe somebody a bit older, maybe somebody a bit younger. I thought things were covered really, really well after that point.
Well, it was, you know, he was from a different generation. I mean,
Yeah.
when I anchored with Don Shelby, I mean, we're still besties, you know. I mean,
Yep.
he's brother. He's like, you know, my confidant. I don't think I've had a closer friend than Don. And he was, you know, he was wonderful to work with, and I love him dearly. And I miss those days because we had quite the relationship, friendship.
You know, it's so funny you bring that up because the old building there on 11th and Nicollet Mall, I called Don and go, Don, if I have to meet you on the roof, we'll have a cigar. He goes, okay. Every time somebody drove me nuts, I would show up at Channel 4, go up on the roof with Don Shelby, and he'd go, Tom, now, first of all, you have to understand you can't physically attack anyone. That's not a good idea. I'm like, okay, Don, I won't. He was so good to me from the first day I met him, and you were too. You guys were unbelievable. Television was very accepting. Some people in radio were not. But, yeah, Don Shelby is one of my favorite people in the world. As a matter, I love that man.
Well, and I think everybody who knows Don would say the same thing. He's just a wonderful human being.
No question. You see, this is Pat, what you just did about 5 minutes ago is exactly why I want to do these things. Looking at women, the women who changed television news, and was all for the good as far as I'm concerned. Because the first time I ever saw Dave Moore in person, I was walking through Dayton's in downtown Minneapolis, and he was just happened to be walking through Dayton's at that time, and he walked past me. And as a young boy, I was, I think, 16 or 15 at the time. It was like I had run into the news god. I mean, Dave Moore was a very, very big deal back in the day. There's no question about that, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was our Walter Cronkite, no question.
He was indeed. So now we go many, many years later, and I hadn't seen Dave in all those years. And I went to Cookhouse to do a voiceover, right? Got into voiceover business. And I don't know how many years ago this would have been, but it shows the kind of guy that Dave Moore was. First time I was ever introduced to Dave Moore was at Cookhouse. He was doing a voiceover in Studio A, and I was in Studio B, whatever it was. We were not working together, but happened to be in the same place. And we're sitting there, and I said hello, and he said hello, and a couple of minutes later, he said, "Tom, I have to tell you something." I said, "Okay, Dave, what's going on?" He goes, "I cannot tell you how great it is to meet a legend like you." I almost had a heart attack. It's like Dave Moore just gave me a compliment of the highest order. I mean, to have Dave Moore say something like that to me, I will never, ever forget it. And he was a very nice man. He had his opinions, like you've just pointed out, but he was a very nice man, to me anyway. I think it was to most people.
And he was very down to earth and very humble. And he was, it was all about the news, and it was not about being a celebrity or being well. It was just about doing the news and doing a good job. And he did all of it remarkably well, as we all know.
Yes. No question. He was one of the reasons. And Pat, I will tell you, you were one of the reasons as well, in my opinion, because, you know, Catherine and I have lived in New York, done a lot of work in Chicago, went to Los Angeles, did a bunch of stuff there, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm very serious when I say, because I talk about it a lot, the best news, local news in America would be in Chicago and Minneapolis, St. Paul. I think the news is phenomenal in those two cities. The first time when Catherine and I moved to New York, we were living in New York, I turned on the news and went, this news is terrible. Goes really hypey and, hey, how you doing today? You know, all the, I don't know what the hell you would call that. But do you think it is true that Minneapolis is right up there shoulder to shoulder with Chicago?
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. And I was just so, you know, I was so fortunate to be able to work there because it was something that people took seriously and worked hard at. And, you know, it was important. And I've always thought people, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I always thought people like in Minnesota were smarter than everywhere else because in the winter we stayed indoors and we read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, yes, that is true. There's no question about it.
Yeah, I always thought there was something to that. So
it was a wonderful beginning, Pat, because I do want people to know, again, I'm of that generation now looking back, that news did get much better when they brought in women to be shoulder to shoulder with men as far as anchoring is concerned. That's how I met you. That's how I met a number of people. But now we have to talk about things, and I'm going to turn it over to Catherine and Alex and Andy because I'll probably tear up. Catherine, the name of the book.
Before All Is Said and Done. I'm showing it on, there we go.
There you go, you got it.
This
Perfect.
is the book.
She's showing it on the camera right now. Mm-hmm. So Pat.
Oh, hi, Catherine.
Hey, how are you?
God, it's so great. Pat,
yeah, I was just looking through the book while you guys were chatting, and it's like, oh boy, this is some heavy stuff, but totally necessary. Right.
Well, and I think it's a very readable book. I mean, one of the things I'm most proud of is that it's it's not a tough read. I mean, there might be some subject matter that you find tough.
That's what I meant. Yes.
where you are in your life, but I think it's an easy read, and it's stories of people and what they went through. When I became a widow, I went online and I was looking for help, because this was territory I had not navigated before. And literally the only thing I could find were books that widows had written about their singular grief. And that wasn't helping me because they experience grief, I believe, in a very personal and different way from the way somebody else might experience it. And so I thought, I need to talk to people who've been through this. And I didn't want it to be a book about me and my grief and what happened to me, although I started each chapter with kind of why I was doing that chapter. And I wanted to talk to other people. And what I found out was that, there's a lot of knowledge out there, but people aren't really talking to widows. They're not talking to widowers about what they went through or what happened to them. And I thought that was really important because I think people learn from other people's stories.
Sure. And your book doesn't just include like an elderly partner dying. It's young people.
Right.
And, you don't really think of young people going through a partner dying because they're young.
And young people don't think they're going to die. I mean,
Right.
and when you think about it, think back on your own experience in life. I mean, we weren't thinking about these things as a young person, but I went to this walk last summer. It was for an organization called Brighter Days Grief Center. And I met this young woman. She was like 32 years old. She had 4 young children, all under the age of, 9. Her husband died of a heart attack driving in the car, 3 of the kids.
Wow.
The children lived. He died instantly. And here she was with no life insurance, no will, no trust,
Boy.
and no income. Yeah, and you don't think that's going to happen to you,
Right.
because when you're young, you don't think you're going to die.
It's
Yeah,
true.
that is very, very true.
Yeah, we just set up our will in a trust not too long ago because I was just like, we aren't getting any younger, and this is ridiculous. I mean, we had a will, but we hadn't updated it or looked at it. I didn't even know where it was. So it was time to do that, and I think that, maybe as soon as you get married and decide to have children, you should maybe do that.
One of the things that I talk about in the book, and I talk about this when I talk about the book, is that, we prepare for everything in our lives. We prepare for going to college. We prepare for getting married. We prepare for having a baby. But many of us don't prepare for the inevitability of death and the fact that one day one of us might not come home.
Right?
Because it's not something you want to think about. And I mean, I always say to people, I used to be normal. I was one of those people walking around thinking, this will never happen to me. I'm going to die at the age of 105 in bed next to the man I love.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's the way I was living my life. And, I talk about the fact that even though Bucky and I had a will and a trust, it didn't mean anything because I didn't understand what was in the will and the trust. I never paid any attention in any of those meetings. And as it turned out, it didn't protect me at all from any of the problems that I ended up facing. And Bucky was an attorney and I was a journalist. And you would think that two people who had that kind of education and experience would have been a little bit more savvy about what might happen if one of us died. And we used to think and joke about the fact that I would be the one who would die first because Bucky's father lived to be 95 in good health.
Mm-hmm.
Bucky been a professional athlete. At the age of 72, he had a 32-inch waist. He didn't drink. He ate, organic. He exercised every day. And he would say to me, I don't know what I'm going to do because you're going to really go first. I mean, you drink, you don't eat very well. I'm like, you're absolutely right. I'm the one going out first. It never dawned on us that he would get sick and in 3 months be dead. It never occurred to us that could happen. And it happens. It happens all the time. And people don't understand that if they are not prepared for that day, that they're going to leave behind what I call a trail of tears for their families. Because families end up in fight over, you were talking earlier, Tom, about money. It's all about money. Well, trust me, it's all about money when somebody dies.
Yep.
And you don't think that it's going to be that, but it can be that. And especially in this day and age when there are so many blended families, stepchildren and step-parents. I mean, they end up fighting in court and, in some cases spending everything they would have inherited fighting each other over it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very sad. It's very sad, but it happens every day.
It does indeed. Now, Andy and Alex, you're of an age, you're both in your 30s. You're both married. You both have children. Have you spent time talking about this?
Oh, yeah, we just we did some talking about it a couple weeks ago, actually.
And
Nobody wants to talk about this. I get it.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I just
about it.
Well, I mean, it's like when you have one kid, it's pretty obvious what's going to happen when you die. It all goes to the kid. When you have two kids, it becomes, I mean, it's like, 50-50. What do we have? We have the house and a couple of cars,
I
that
was
sort
going to
of
say
thing.
it's not like we have
Yeah, it's
all
not like
these
we're millionaires or anything that need
fabulous
to.
things to divvy up. It's like,
Right.
Right.
But
we
it's still,
get
it's like,
half of
it's
whatever there is.
it's still, you got to have some basic thing in place. You have to have it in writing that everything goes to the kids 50-50 if that's what you
Right.
want. Because
You don't-
otherwise people can argue that, oh, actually this one time, they said, hey, if you want my house, then I guess you can have it one day. And
It's
that means
interest-
I'm entitled to it.
It's interesting because we got life insurance before when I was pregnant with Fawn. We were like, we should have a life insurance policy, so we did that. I know what songs I want played at my funeral.
Really?
But we cannot decide who our kids would go to if we died before they turned
It's a
18.
difficult decision.
Like, just
Mhm. And that's one of the reasons people, especially young people, don't want to talk about it, put it off, because that's the issue that sometimes they can't agree on, and they don't want to even think about the fact that maybe somebody else would be taking care of their children. And if that happens, who would that be, and why would they make that decision? There's a chapter in there to talk about who's going to get what. I mean, I have a girlfriend who hasn't spoken to her sister in 25 years
Ooh.
because her sister took a bracelet that she is sure her mom would have wanted her to have.
Exactly. Yep. That's exactly
now,
what I'm talking about.
If mom had said and there's a chapter on this too in the book called Writing an Intention Letter, if you write down what your intentions are, for example, especially in Minnesota, there are a lot of people with cabins up north. Well, if dad and mom die and there's the cabin left to Joe and Jim wants to sell it and Joe wants to keep it, and they
Mhm.
get into an argument about, well, what would dad have wanted?
Yep.
Well, if dad says what he would want,
Yeah.
then there'd be no argument about it. But most people don't do an intention letter. They don't say, well, this bracelet should go to Jane and not Jill, or this cabin, if you want to sell it, you can sell it to your brother for X amount of money, but he can't use it anymore. If you write down what you want to have happen, then they can't fight about it, because inevitably one will say, well, this is what I think dad would want. And the other one will say, no, this is what I think dad would want. But they don't actually know what dad would
Mhm.
want unless dad spells it out. And, I also found out that in a lot of cases, dad doesn't ever talk about it because nobody wants to bring the subject up. There's a chapter called Dad Never Told Us. And if you wait until somebody gets sick, well, I guarantee you dad will tell you, because they don't want to have any conflict or any confusion or division among family members while you're sick and dying in some cases. That's the last thing you're thinking about.
See, I was lucky. My sister just took everything and
yeah.
Well,
Well, no, I remember
and
before-
doled out some crumbs.
Yeah, before Grandma died, she took me into her bedroom and was like, "Come look at my jewelry before you know who takes it all."
And she took a lot.
I was like,
She took
Okay.
most of it.
We were talking about Don Shelby earlier. Don, after he read my book, he called me and he said, Pat, my intention letter is up to 800 pages.
Yeah, I've got the opposite problem. I've been asking our kids, what do you want? Do you want any art? Do you want anything that we have? I mean, I don't, our blender. What do you want? That's been a year. No response. So,
here's the thing.
I guess they don't care.
I never want anything, and Andy likes to take stuff, so he'll just get most of it.
I'll
Because
just
where am I
transfer
going
all
to
your
put it?
That's not
furniture
the
into my
point. It's
Yeah,
like,
where
is
am I
there
gonna put it?
anything that would remind you of us or any tiny? I mean,
I think that's the kind of thing that we can probably.
I think
I think
yeah, I
we're
was gonna say, I don't
amicable
think
enough that
Andy
it's
and I
like,
are gonna
yeah.
get into.
I don't know, Pat. You might want to weigh in
Just
here because
fighting
sometimes
over it.
emotions start taking over
Yeah.
and people start fighting about stupid stuff.
Yeah, they do. I mean, again, I talk about in the book fighting over grandma's pie plate. The pie plate might be worth $5, but emotionally to somebody in that family, it means everything. And you don't really know those things until, again, you end up having to face the inevitability that somebody dies. And it's interesting. It's almost you can't really explain to people where you might find yourself. It's very difficult. But I think in some of the stories in the book, it becomes very clear what happened. And if you're not prepared for this inevitability, you're going to, I would say in 100% of cases, if you're not prepared, you're going to run into problems. And even sometimes when you are prepared, you're going to run into problems that you had no way of anticipating because you just don't want to think about it and you don't know about it. And I find a lot that either the kids don't want to talk about it to the parents or the parents don't want to talk about it with the kids. And people will say to me all the time, well, what should I do? What should I do? And I said, it's just like anything else that's important in your life. Put it on your calendar, set a time and a place and a date, and sit down and have these discussions or have these talks.
Mm-hmm.
Catherine, do we have to do that?
I've been wanting to.
Okay. Oh, because well, Pat, let me put it this way. I'm 8 years older than Catherine, so she's just waiting it out.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay.
That's what's happening.
Well, Tom, I hate to tell you, but Bucky was older than me. I mean,
Yep.
The bottom line is we don't control this.
Right.
We do not have control over when we're born or when we die. We don't control that.
Yeah, look at my sister. She just stroked out, and that was it.
That was it. Yeah, very
and
young.
she was
age.
also just like your husband. Didn't drink, didn't smoke, everything she ate was organic. She was obsessed with health. I mean,
Well, she was also one of the most stressed out human beings I've ever met.
Yeah.
Well, this is true, but I mean, you'd think that living your life like constantly thinking about your health, you might be healthier, but maybe not. I don't know.
Stress is terrible for you.
Yes, it is.
It's true.
Indeed, it
Well,
is true.
We do what we can, but again, we don't control it. We don't control it.
No question. So how is the book doing, Pat?
Amazingly well, because I obviously, I didn't know anything about publishing a book when I started this book. I had no idea, what it would entail and what it would involve or who to get to help me. And, you can't just pick up the phone and call a publisher and say, hey, I'm writing this great book. I mean, do you know how many books come out every day? Hundreds of thousands of people, especially during COVID, everybody was writing a book, right?
Yeah.
So, it was difficult. I ended up having to self-publish the book, and so you get no help with publicity or anybody even guiding you on how you should go about marketing. I'm lucky because people who knew me in Minnesota were interested in having me on the TV show and blah blah blah. So I got a lot of kind of exposure in that regard, and it helped me a lot. But mostly I've done this on my own, and amazingly, the book has done really, really well. I mean, most self-published books. Let me just ask you a question, guess. How many books do you think a self-published author sells a year?
Oh, God. Andy, Alex, Catherine?
How many
Well,
books an average
no idea.
self-published author sells in a year? It's probably like 100.
Okay. It's 5.
Oh,
Well,
Five?
5?
Alex
you-
almost went and had the big one there.
You can't underestimate how many books there are that people just crap out
Yeah.
onto Amazon.
Well,
Yep.
No one ever touches them.
Well, there are.
There's probably 1 million books on Amazon
Yeah.
that have never sold one copy.
Now, are 3 million books just in my category.
Yep, exactly.
3 million?
Jeez.
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, go on Amazon. It's amazing. I mean, it's not a business where you're going to make a lot of money. Trust me, unless you're, Prince Andrew or something. I'm sure. But amazingly, and I remember I called Harvey McKay, who's written all the books, and
Sure.
Yeah.
Swim with
he
the
knew how to
sharks.
market it. Harvey knew how to market himself.
Mm-hmm.
Harvey. So he said to me something that was really interesting, and I didn't really understand it at the time. But he said, Pat, I don't care how much publicity you get. I don't care how many articles are written about it. If you don't write a good book, nobody's going to buy it. And I think he was absolutely right, because in spite of all of the obstacles, I think my book has sold because it's a good book. It has information that can help you, and it can help everyone. And that's why I wrote the book. I got so angry at what happened to me after Bucky died. I got so mad that I did not know what I did not know, that I thought, gosh, if I can help one person out there figure this out before it's too late, then I will die at peace, because it just is so unnecessary to go through what a lot of people go through, especially at the worst time of their lives when they're grieving. And I talk about the fact that when you're grieving somebody's death who you love and you don't think you can live without, your brain doesn't function right. You're not working on all cylinders. And it's very tough, because you have to make some very tough decisions. And you're not in your right mind. And you're making these big decisions that, you can look back on and go, wow, why did I do that?
Boy, I've never done that in my life, have I?
No history of that at all.
No history at all.
That sort of behavior.
Yeah, it's all true. One thing I do have to mention, and I want to get this because it's very, very important to me, and I don't think most people understand. Pat had a huge career on television. I did okay in radio, and I used to run into Pat on the golf course once in a while. And it's not really necessary to say which golf course, unless you want to, Pat. Are you still involved there?
I will golf at any golf. For me, it's the great. I don't care what. It's the great escape to be outside and to not worry or think about anything except trying to get that little white ball in a hole that's a million miles down the road. I mean, think about how hard that sport is.
It's getting further every year too.
But yes, it gets. You're right. The older you get, the further away it gets. You're right about that. But I want you to know, because Pat and I always got along. We've always been really, really good friends. Don Shelby was certainly a part of that as well. But Pat, I will never forget sitting on the bench, and didn't matter which hole we were on, whatever. But I would run into Pat, and we would sit there for about a half an hour instead of golf, and we just talk about this, that, or the other thing. And it was just, I enjoyed those conversations so much. And, we eventually got back to playing whatever hole we were each on. But I used to love sitting in those benches on golf courses talking to you. I tell you that.
Oh, and right back at you, Tom. Those were such great times and great memories. And hopefully we'll have more of them, because this summer when I come back, we've got to play golf.
We are definitely going to play golf, because I'll tell you another thing I just found out from Pat a few days ago, because I brought this up to her and she said, really? 9/11, September 11th.
Right.
Back in the day, of course, the planes crashed into the World Trade Center. And I was supposed to meet a couple of people to play at Minnetonka Country Club. It's a wonderful golf course, great place, right in the middle of Minneapolis, as a matter of fact. I suppose it's kind of on the edge, but it's just a really load of fun to play it. And Paul Majors was a member there for a while as well. But I told Pat, I will never forget, on 9/11, I had to do the show. And I got very lucky, because my show was put on a national, I guess it was one of the whatever channels, news channels, all that stuff. It was about the planes attacking this, and everybody was in just this mood. And I said, Pat, I can never forget standing there at Minnetonka, and no traffic, no airplanes were in the sky, because they were all told to not take off. Yep. No airplanes took off after a while. And I remember standing there in the middle of, well, again, it's not the middle of Minneapolis, but close enough to the middle of the metro area. That's the best way to put it. I'm standing there. I can't hear anything. There's nothing moving. I got a couple of friends, and we're talking about, my God. And I didn't know this, but my morning show ended up on a nationally broadcast movie about the attacks. And I had no idea that was going on. I'm talking to Pat about this, and talking to Pat. And Pat, what did you tell me about that very same day?
I was there at that very same time. And I was playing golf that morning with another woman friend of mine. And because of where Minnetonka is located, all the planes went over that area.
Yes. Yep.
Take off. It's right near Lake Calhoun, as you know. And so there's constant noise when you're playing golf there. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of plane traffic. And as we were playing golf, I said, you know what? There's something really strange going on today. And she said, what? Well, there's no noise. And she said, you're right. And
It's
then all at
true.
once I looked up in the sky and this giant like purple airplane was flying by. And I thought, I've never seen that airline before. And I think it was some, airline that was forced to land in Minneapolis,
Yeah.
From God knows where. But anyway, we finished the round of golf and it was like, there's something strange. And we walked in and they had it on the news and the second tower had just been hit
Mm-hmm.
when I walked into the clubhouse. And so we were actually in the same place on the same day, having the same experience on 9/11 and never knew about it. So that's kind of odd.
Never knew about it until last week. That is so weird, you said, Tom. I was there the same time you're talking about. It's just unbelievable. But I just, Pat, well, the great thing about it is that, as far as media is concerned and all the rest of it, television and radio and all that stuff, and people have their opinions about everybody, and it's, oh my God. But behind the scenes, and maybe Chicago is like this too, because, Bill Curtis and people like that work there. But I don't think I could have had a better place to have a successful morning show than Minneapolis, because you guys, Pat Miles and Don Shelby and, Paul Majors and I used to hang out together once in a while and play golf again. I got so lucky to come back home to Minneapolis. We were living in New York when I was offered the job. We had just found out that Andy was going to be born, said, we can't raise children in New York City. I don't want to. I suppose we could, but we don't want to. And I literally, after Catherine called me on the phone, that was back when there were cradle phones, and I was talking to Catherine. She said, we're going to have a baby. I said, okay, when? She said, in October. I said, okay. I would put the phone back on the cradle, and at literally the second I put it, and for younger people, you don't know what a cradle is, but old desktop phones sat on the counter, and then you put the phone down on top of it. But I remember literally putting the phone on the cradle. I had just put it on there. The phone rang. It was Dave Hamilton from KQRS, said, Tom, we'd like to bring you as our morning guy. Do you have any interest in doing a morning show? And I went, yeah, sure. I mean, I didn't have to worry about how are we going to move back to Minneapolis? What am I going to do? I got the voiceover career going. Oh, my God. But it was just one of those lucky things again. The timing was perfect because Hammy called me right after I found out. But I will tell you, Pat, and you know this, I've talked to you about this a number of times, probably sitting on a bench in a golf course. I could not have wished for a better place to have a career like I've had than Minneapolis and St. Paul.
Oh, well, I feel the same way. I absolutely feel the same way. And I think Don would tell you that he feels the same
Yep.
way. As a matter of fact, I remember because I was doing a radio show at the time, and Paul Majors had decided to go to Los Angeles
Yep.
to take the job there and, kind of move into the, big times. And I remember Don called me that morning when Paul made that announcement. He goes, Pat, here's what I want. He goes, what I want is for WCCO to put my picture on a giant billboard, and it says Don Shelby going nowhere fast.
That's Don. But, he was perfect for the market. There's no question about that. Minneapolis and St. Paul have to understand the television, the radio, newspapers is really, if it's not the best, it's up there with all the best ones. There's no question. It's a great media market, don't you think?
Oh, I absolutely agree. Like I said earlier, I just felt so fortunate that I landed there. And it was just out of the clear blue. Don and I both got this call on the same day from Ron Hamburg, who at the time was the news director at WCCO TV.
Mm-hmm.
And he had been looking at audition reels of people that he was looking for a team to come in do the weekend news. And he picked me and he picked Don. And so he called us both and asked us if we'd want to fly. Don was working in Houston at the time and I was in Denver. And he said, would you want to fly in and audition together for this job? And I was like, there's no way I'm moving to Minneapolis, but I've never been there. So, I knew how cool it was. And I said, I've never been there and I'd like to see the city. So it's a free trip to go to Minneapolis, right?
Yep.
So I flew into Minneapolis and Don was waiting for me. He had flown in from Houston and we met at the airport and we went down, we went down to Nicollet Mall. And that was back in the day. This is how old I am, but they used to play classical music on Nicollet Mall.
Yeah.
And there were these that were handing out free cigarettes. Do you remember that at all?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
And I thought, I've come to Mecca. This is like unbelievable. And it was one of the bright, beautiful spring days where everybody's out and happy. And I thought, oh, this is my place. This is where I belong. And so I signed up immediately, and so did I. And Don and I just, loved each other, and we did a great audition. And of course, after I moved there, it was winter. I was like, what have I done? I didn't even have.
Well, Pat, will you stay in touch? So the book is doing well. I'm really, really happy for you there. But just to talk to you again, because I don't see anywhere near as much as I used to, because you're not a resident anymore, and we're out of town a lot as well. But one of these days, you and I are going to sit on a golf bench again and schmooze about how the world should be.
This summer for sure, and I will stay in touch, and you do the same. And gosh, Tom, I just think you're the best, and I'm so happy for you and your family and what you've put together with this podcast. I think it's amazing and wonderful, and God bless you all.
I did find out this morning, though, that people under the age of 25 have stopped listening to music and podcasts on their phones.
Well, not everybody.
So I'm already ruining another business. That's great news. And that's wonderful.
You get in and everyone else gets out.
Exactly.
Just like the market.
Pat, I will give you a call in a couple of days, but thank you so much for being on. I'd love it if you popped on once in a while just to tell us how things are going. And if any big news comes up, I'd love to hear your take on it.
Oh, I appreciate that, Tom, very much. And thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And it's great to talk to all of you.
Where's the best place to get your book, Pat?
Amazon.
Nothing wrong with Amazon.
Should drop the name one more time.
Yeah. Well, you can get it at Barnes and Noble and places like that, but I think they have to order it. But you can get it immediately on Amazon.
It's a wonderful thing, ladies and gentlemen. Pat Miles, a legendary newscaster. And again, this whole series is going to be about, because I don't think anybody's ever addressed the fact how women changed the national news forever by joining these staffs. Don't you agree? It was not just the male point of view. Now we had both points of view, and the news delivery got much better, don't you think?
Oh, I agree. But I also, I think back on my career, I worked hard because you had to, I mean, you had to be better. You had to be smarter. You had to know more. So I agree with you, Tom. I think it was all great. And I can't believe when I look back on it that I actually landed where I landed. So I feel the same as you. I just feel incredibly lucky and blessed to have been in Minnesota.
And one more little book plug. The name of the book is Before All Is Said and Done.
Very good. Pat, I'll be in touch soon, all right?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, my dear. Pat Miles, ladies and gentlemen. The book is available at Amazon, so go get it. Any closing words back in Minneapolis, Andy and Alex?
I don't think so.
So that made me very happy and very sad.
Okay. I'm still waiting for that list of stuff you might want.
You're going to have a hard time with that, Mom.
All right. So it all goes in the dumpster? Give me a break.
Andy, here's the thing. I feel like, and no shade to Dan and Melissa, but I feel like when the day does come, I feel like Andy and I just need to be put in a room without any outside.
Yeah,
whatever.
I think that's true.
Because Andy and Dan and Melissa are more attached to things than you and I are. Andy, wouldn't you agree?
I don't know if Melissa would even really want any. I mean,
but
maybe some of the furniture.
But just things are more sentimental to them in their lives than you and I are.
I'm kind of like that too.
You're definitely more sentimental about things than I am, for sure. But I feel like if you and I were just put in a room,
we could figure it out.
And it would be there would be no outside influence from anybody, and it would just be we just have to hash this out in a few hours. We'd be done.
Oh, it'll take a lot longer than a few hours.
And who wants Jude? That's a big question.
Who wants Jude?
Oh no, we went through Melissa's grandpa's stuff, and he didn't have much stuff, and it took days. Because it's just you don't think about it. Every closet you open, here's another 50 things that you have to talk about.
You're in luck, Andy, because you are with the quickest purger. Going through,
shovel it all into a dumpster.
Oh my God,
Going all
Mom
into a
knows.
dumpster.
Mom knows. She has seen me at work going through Grandma and Grandpa's old place, going through Grandpa's stuff, going through their old house. She would like start looking at things and thinking about it and be like, gone, bye, nobody cares, get rid of it. I'm awesome at it.
That's kind of what we
It's
did
gonna
with
be
a lot of Jim's stuff too, though. It's like, he had a big garage full of stuff, and we
I'm telling you.
rented a dumpster and just filled it up as quickly as we could. We kept a lot of he had tools and stuff like there. There was definitely stuff that
Kind
people
of
wanted.
depressing, thinking that nobody wants your stuff. It's all.
I
gonna
mean,
just
I
be in
don't
a
want half my
dumpster.
stuff. so-
No, I'm not saying that we're gonna throw away all your stuff. I think that Andy and I will be able to do a very good job of like, what do you want? You take this, I'll take this. What's its worth? Maybe we'll sell it, and then we'll split it. And oh, you're the one that's gonna sell it, so you can have 15% more of the money, or whatever. Because we're
Yeah, you
rational.
two aren't
people.
super. Yeah, but you two aren't like oddly greedy.
Clamoring
like
for
some
the
people.
money.
Well,
Yeah,
no, that is
People get
true.
really weird about
we'll
every
be-
penny.
Yes, they do.
We would be very like Andy and I have a relationship that I think it'll go very smoothly
I don't
when
think
it
it would
does.
be a
I
come
think
to
so,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, and you're both
Yeah.
honest, so that's
Yeah.
big.
All right, we will talk to you guys tomorrow. I thought that was a wonderful situation. Pat Miles on with us today, ladies and gentlemen, talking about how women made the local news much better across America. Diana Pierce is on tomorrow, correct?
And her book.
And her book, yeah, there's her book. But Diana Pierce is on tomorrow.
it is.
I believe so.
Yes, she's on the calendar.
We're reaching out to Cindy Bricado for next week. We got a bunch of people that we want to get on the show, and I'm really glad that Pat was the first one because she is a very strong woman, and like I said, we were great friends. She and Don Shelby were so nice to me, it's unbelievable. But yeah, we'll have women did change news, and I don't know that anybody's ever brought this up before. Have you ever heard a reference to it?
No, not really. No.
I'm kind of surprised that nobody's ever written a book about that, how women changed television news forever.
Well, see, Pat's got something else to do now.
He's got to write another book. All right, Andy, Alex, any closing words?
Take care of yourselves and each other.
There you go. We'll
What's that
talk to you
from?
tomorrow.
Here's a what?
Star Trek.
Take care of yourselves and each other. There's a daytime talk show.
Phil Donahue.
Not really a talk show. Jerry Springer.
I was going to say
Jerry
Jerry
Springer.
Springer.
He ended
There you go.
every episode
And now
with
my final
take care of
thoughts.
yourselves and each other.
After pounding each other in the
After-
face.
I know,
I know.
really.
I know. I always thought it was. I was like, really? That's the advice you're going to get after an hour
Yeah.
of people just physical
One of the
physical
most
violence?
Exploitative men on
Like,
earth.
what?
and
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
All right.
to end on a high note, I guess. Right?
Yeah.
Indeed. Diana Pierce tomorrow, again, talking about how women made local news and national news much better when they were brought on the set. All right?
Okay, I better tell her what she's talking about.
No, well, she can talk about whatever she wants to talk about. But,
Oh, okay.
all right, we'll talk to you guys tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.
Got a picture in my noggin reminds me of this one was before. Every time I hear the same reminds me how you talking.